You've seen the headlines. In late February 2026, the world just watched as a crisis in the Middle East exploded into open war. It seemed to come out of nowhere, this incredibly rapid, violent escalation. But the truth is, the seeds for this were planted months before. So today, we're going to break down exactly how we got here, looking at the key moments that pushed the region right to the brink. And bam, this was the moment it all ignited. After a whole day of crazy rumors, chaotic reports, and flat-out denials from officials, the Iranian state media finally had to confirm the unthinkable. Their most powerful figure, the man who had the final say on everything for over 30 years, was gone. The response from Iran's president? It was immediate, and it was unambiguous. This quote right here framed the killing not just as some political move, but as an attack on the entire Muslim world. It basically set the stage for a massive, inevitable retaliation. To really get the sheer impact of this, you have to understand who Ayatollah Khamenei was. I mean, he wasn't just a political leader. He was the final word on everything, from the military to the economy, you name it. His death created this giant power vacuum, the likes of which Iran hadn't seen since its 1979 revolution. So how on earth did we get to this point? To really understand why this attack happened, we have to rewind a few months and look at what was going on inside Iran. There was a crisis that was quietly but very surely reaching a boiling point. It all started with pure frustration. The currency was collapsing, prices for everyday goods were skyrocketing. It pushed people to their absolute limit. But this very quickly became about so much more than the economy. It just exploded into the largest anti-government uprising in decades, with protesters on the streets demanding a total overthrow of the regime. And the regime's response was just brutal. According to a statement from U.S. President Donald Trump, this is the estimated number of protesters killed in the crackdown that followed. Just think about that number. It's a staggering death toll that sent shockwaves through the international community. The scale of this repression was just off the charts. Reports said the order to shoot protesters came directly from Khamenei himself. We're talking about security forces using military-grade weapons on civilians, a complete internet blackout to hide what they were doing from the rest of the world, and tens of thousands of arrests. It was horrifying. And this is the pivot point. This is where a domestic crisis in Iran becomes a full-blown international one. The brutal crackdown got the world's attention, and for some countries, it looked like a moment of weakness for the regime, a moment to act. Things escalated so fast. I mean, look at this timeline. In just a matter of weeks, we went from threats and warnings to a massive U.S. military buildup in the Persian Gulf. 2 full aircraft carrier strike groups were sent in. And when one final last-ditch diplomatic effort failed, well, the path to war seemed pretty much set in stone. And here's exactly why those talks were doomed from the start. The two sides were living on different planets. The U.S. came in with a list of non-negotiable demands, about Iran's nuclear program, its missiles, and Iran just rejected them outright, calling the whole thing psychological warfare and promising a decisive response. There was no common ground. So, with diplomacy dead in the water and all the military pieces in place, the stage was set. And that brings us to the event that finally lit the fuse on this war, the massive, coordinated military operation on February 28th. The attack was just stunning in its scale and its precision. It kicked off with strikes right in the heart of Tehran, hitting the supreme leader's own compound. But at the same time, attacks were hitting critical military and nuclear sites all across the country, from missile factories in Isfahan to those heavily fortified deep underground nuclear facilities at Fordo and Natanz. But here's the key thing to understand. This was way more than an attack on buildings. This was what military analysts call a decapitation strike. The goal wasn't just to break things. It was to eliminate Iran's entire senior military and political leadership in one single devastating blow. And that included, of course, the supreme leader himself. So, how did the U.S. justify it? Well, the message from President Trump was crystal clear. He framed it as the removal of a cruel tyrant, and he explicitly said the goal was to give the Iranian people a chance to take back their country. Basically, regime change. You'd think an attack like that, wiping out the entire leadership, might cause a country to just collapse. But that is not what happened with Iran. Instead, it responded with immediate and overwhelming force all across the Middle East. This chart is fascinating because it tells 2 totally different stories at the same time. On one hand, you see Iran launching this massive barrage, about 100 ballistic missiles, straight at Israel, a huge act of aggression. But on the other hand, you see the incredible effectiveness of Israel's air defense systems, which, as you can see, shot down the vast majority of them. But here's the tragic reality of it all. Most is not all. One missile got through. It slammed into an apartment building in Tel Aviv, killing one woman and injuring more than 24 others. It was just this stark, horrible reminder of the real human cost of war, as millions of Israelis spent the night huddled in bomb shelters. And you've got to understand, Israel wasn't the only target, not by a long shot. As you can see here, Iran's retaliation was a region-wide assault. They fired missiles and drones targeting American military bases in at least 5 different countries. And just like that, in the span of a few short days, what started as an internal protest in Iran had exploded into a full-scale, multi-front war involving global superpowers. So, beyond the battlefield, what did the immediate fallout look like? The reaction from around the world was swift, and it was starkly divided. You had the US and Israel defending their actions as totally necessary. Iran, as we saw, called it a war against all Muslims. Russia came out with a harsh condemnation, while the European Union was kind of stuck in the middle, just urging for calm in what was now a dangerously polarized world. So what's happening back in Iran with its leadership wiped out? Well, the state moved incredibly fast to project at least an image of stability. They formed a temporary 3-person council to manage the country and the war, while they figure out who will be the permanent successor to Khamenei. And all of this leaves us with this one giant, looming question. You've got Iran's leadership gone, but its military is still lashing out. You've got American and Israeli forces on the highest alert. And you have the rest of the world just watching nervously. The most volatile region on the planet has just entered a brand new and, frankly, terrifying chapter. So the question is no longer how we got here, it's what on earth happens now.